Section 3 of Harper's Young People, Volume 1, Issue 6, December 9, 1879. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jeff Moon of Rochester, New York. Harper's Young People, Volume 1, Issue 6, December 9, 1879. Section 3. The Brave Little Swiss Boy, Part 5. Walter has a new adventure. Tony Herzl recovered but slowly from the injuries he had suffered, and the entire winter passed away before he found himself able to make use of his limbs again. But the doctor's fears that he would never be able to resume the life of a mountaineer were unfortunately confirmed. He never properly recovered the use of his foot, and Tony often cast a sorrowful glance at the gun now hanging useless on the wall. To this cause of regret there was added anxiety for the future. The chase, which had hitherto so materially assisted in supplying his wants, could no longer be followed, and although Walter had grown tall and strong, he was not experienced enough to take his father's place. In addition to this, Herzl had expressly forbidden his boy to have anything more to do with hunting, which sooner or later would be sure to lead to a violent and dreadful death, and in order to remove temptation as much as possible from him, he sold his gun to one of his neighbors. "Now, Watty," said he, putting the 80 francs which he had received into a drawer, "we have got nearly money enough for another cow, and we must see if we can't raise the remainder, that we may have at least milk and butter." "We've got plenty of money, father," replied Watty. "There is the 100 francs that Mr. Seymour gave me lying useless in the desk, and I insist upon your taking the half of it at least, to replenish the byre. But," added he with a sigh, "without chamois hunting I do not see how matters are to go with us. Do you know, father, I have been thinking that I might do something to earn my living." "In what way, Watty?" "Well, I might go down to the inn every day, and offer my services to the visitors as a guide. I know all the roads, and can show the people the way to the Blue Grotto, and conduct them to the peaks of the Wellhorn and Engelhorn, and as the landlord is always so friendly, I'm sure he would recommend me." "Not a bad idea," replied Herzl. "To be sure, it's only for the summer, but as there are always a good many travelers, you may be able to save enough to carry you through the winter. Turn guide, then, Watty," he added, after a little more consideration, "and I will stay at home and attend to the house and the cow. Let us be thankful I'm strong enough for that, at any rate." The plan of operation, which was thus arranged, was not, however, destined to be carried into effect, for the next day Frieshardt came to pay a visit to the cottage, with a proposal of quite a different kind. He had shown himself very attentive and neighborly since Herzl's accident, and had given him proofs of kindly feeling during the period of his convalescence. The old friendship had therefore been fully restored, and the matter of the cow and the borrowed money had been long since forgotten. Herzl rose as Frieshardt entered, and gave him a hearty welcome, in which he was cordially joined by Walter. "I have got a suggestion to make to you, neighbor," said the well-to-do farmer, seating himself near the fire. "To me?" exclaimed Herzl. "What can a poor man like me do to serve you?" "Well, I don't mean you so much as Watty," continued Frieshardt. "He has grown a tall, sensible fellow now, and I know he is honest, every inch of him." "Ah, you are right there, neighbor, although I say it to his face," replied Herzl. "You don't need to blush, boy. It is nothing more than your duty to behave honestly. But what can Watty do for you?" "Well, the long and the short of the matter is this," said the farmer. "I have got 60 head of cattle down in Meiringen, which I am going to send to France to sell. A drover has been recommended to me who understands the business, but I should like to send some reliable person with him to look after the money and see that everything is properly attended to. I think Walter would be the man for me, if he will agree to it. He shall have good wages, and everything done to make him comfortable." Father and son exchanged looks, and each saw in the countenance of the other that the proposal was a good one. "If my father is satisfied," said the youth, "I shall be delighted to go." "Well said," replied Frieshardt, evidently pleased. "Now let's hear what you want for the journey." "I would rather you would say what you will give," answered Walter. "I don't understand such things very well." "Well, then, I'll pay all your expenses there and back, and give you 100 francs into the bargain. Are you satisfied with that?" "Yes, more than satisfied," replied the boy. "But I should like it better if you would give father a cow now, instead of giving me the money afterward. I should be glad indeed if he could get one before I go away."
"But what would you want for yourself when you come back?"
"Nothing, neighbor. If you will only grant my request, I shall be quite contented and thankful."
"Well," said Frieshardt, "you are a dutiful and kind-hearted son, and I'm sure you will be a faithful servant. You shall have my cow Black Elsie, and your father can fetch her whenever he chooses. Meanwhile, you must be ready to go to Meiringen tomorrow morning," continued Frieshardt. "I will go with you, and will give you all the instructions you will require. It won't be a difficult affair, and I'm sure you will manage it easily. Adieu until morning."
With these cheering words the farmer left Walter and his father to talk over the unexpected change in their fortunes. Shortly afterward Walter repaired to Frieshardt's farm, and came back, leading Black Elsie in triumph, and after taking farewell of his father, returned to Frieshardt's house on the following morning. The route which Walter's employer chose led them past the splendid waterfalls of the Reichenbach to the charming village of Meiringen, where the cattle were collected. When they reached the village they found a drover of the name of Seppi waiting for them, and to the latter, as well as to Walter, the farmer gave the necessary instructions regarding the treatment of the herd during the ensuing journey. Our young hero entered upon the journey actuated by the best of motives, the duty of looking after the cattle absorbing so much of his attention that he had very little opportunity for increasing his acquaintance with his traveling companion. The fact was, however, that he did not feel himself much drawn toward Seppi, from whom he had received anything but a very friendly welcome when they first met. The drover had, moreover, a rough and uncultivated manner, which was somewhat repulsive. His treatment of the animals was unduly harsh when any of them became restive and obstinate, and he seemed angry when Walter checked his cruel behavior and pointed out to him that the dumb animals entrusted to his care should be treated with kindness and patience. But by degrees the young men became more reconciled to each other, and as Walter accustomed himself to the ungainly appearance of his companion, he came to the generous conclusion that Seppi had an honest and well-meaning heart in spite of his rough and unpolished ways. They soon reached the French frontier, and after a long journey found themselves in the outskirts of Paris. Walter had arranged the stages so well that the animals were in admirable condition and warranted the expectation of a good and prompt sale. Seppi was of the same opinion, and said he thought they would sell for even more than the price Frieshardt had named. "I think they will," assented Walter cheerfully. "The cattle are in splendid order, and we'll see if we can't astonish Mr. Frieshardt when we get home." "Aye, we shall see," echoed Seppi with a peculiar expression of voice. The cattle were all sold at high prices within 3 days, and Walter decided to start for home the next morning. "But why need we be in such a hurry?" inquired Seppi. "Because we've nothing more to stay for, and the longer we stay here the more expense we shall cause to Mr. Frieshardt, and that would be very wrong." The drover shrugged his shoulders, and after a long interval added, cautiously, "You must be very soft, Walter. If you were only a little more wide awake, we might make a good thing for ourselves out of this affair, and no one would be any the wiser." "In what way?" "Don't you see what I mean?" continued Seppi with a cunning smile. "You've got about 1/3 more cash than Frieshardt expects. What is there to hinder us from dividing it between us? It would be a good thing for us, and nobody could ever find it out because we should both keep it dark." "I hope you are only joking," said Walter with a serious look. "Do you think I am going to swindle my master because he has put so much confidence in me? You surely can't be in earnest, Seppi. You only want to test my honesty." "Bother your honesty," returned Seppi. "Sharpness is better than honesty nowadays. You've got more than 30,000 francs in that belt round your waist. We've only got to divide it between us, and then we could lead a glorious life in Paris. No one could ever find us out, for the city is so large that Frieshardt might search for weeks before getting on our track. Look at that, Walter. You'll perhaps never have such a splendid chance again as long as you live. What have you to lose at home? Nothing. You'll only be a poor, half-starved fellow if you go back. Now's your time. Seize the opportunity at once, like a man."
Walter refused with great indignation to heed this infamous advice. His earnest words were followed by a loud burst of laughter from his companion.
"Don't fly into a rage, comrade, and excite yourself that way," said Seppi. "You don't seem to know what a joke is. Just as if we could pocket all that money without the police being at our heels directly. Why, we should get at least 10 years' imprisonment without any manner of doubt. No, I merely wanted to see whether you were really as honest and straightforward as Frieshardt made you out to be, and I see he didn't praise you more than you deserve.
Give me your hand, old fellow, and believe me when I say that you shall never be tried this way again. If you like, I will leave Paris with you this very night to prove to you that I was only making fun."
Walter drew a long breath. "Thank God that it was only a joke," said he, returning the friendly grasp of Seppi, of whose thorough sincerity he seemed to entertain no longer any doubt. "I am quite agreeable to start tonight, for so much money makes me feel anxious, and I shan't be comfortable till it is in the hands of our master." "Well, we can get off at once," assented Seppi, "and then we shall get to Boissy before nightfall. I know a cheap and comfortable inn there, so the sooner we're off the better." Much pleased that his companion should agree so readily to leave Paris, Walter felt sorry that he had entertained any doubts of his character, even for a moment. Their simple preparations were speedily made, and half an hour afterward they set out upon their return and took the road to Boissy. It was dark by the time they reached their destination, but as Seppi knew the village well, he had no difficulty in finding the inn, which was about 10 minutes' walk from the high road. The house was old and uncomfortable in its appearance, and produced a very unfavorable impression upon Walter. But the welcome they received from the landlord was so cordial that the impression was at once removed. An old married couple and a young, powerfully built fellow seemed to be the only occupants of the large building. At Seppi's order, a bottle of wine was brought, and Walter, being somewhat fatigued with the journey, was easily persuaded to take more than his usual allowance. Overpowered with drowsiness, his head sunk down upon the table, and in a few seconds the unsuspecting youth was in a profound slumber.
"There's a snorer for you," said Seppi to the man who had waited upon them. "Lend me a hand to get him to bed, Andre."
Whereupon they carried him upstairs, and along a passage to a small room at the farther end, and laid him on a bed just as he was. Having struck a light, Andre was about to leave the room when he was detained by the other.
"Look here," said Seppi,
taking some money from his pocket.
"I am going away again tomorrow morning before daybreak, and may not be back until the day after. Here is payment for our supper and night's lodging. My friend will stay here, and you must not on any account allow him to go away till I come back. Give him anything he asks for, but keep an eye on him, for he is not right in his head, and must either have someone always with him or be locked in his room. I can't take him with me in the morning, so I have brought him here where I know he'll be in good hands. You will promise to attend to what I have told you, Andre?"
"Your instructions shall be attended to,"
replied the other, slipping the gold coin which Seppi tendered to him into his pocket.
"You shall have no reason to complain."
"That's well. When I come back you shall have another gold piece if I find everything right. And look here, only bolt the outer door tonight instead of locking it, or else leave the key in the lock so that I can get away in the morning without waking anybody."
The man promised to attend to that also, and quitted the apartment. When he was gone, Seppi bolted the room door and gazed at his unconscious companion with a malicious scowl.
"Fool," said he, "I made you a fair offer when I proposed to go halves with the money, but as you were idiot enough to decline, so much the better for me. When you wake in the morning you'll be sorry you let the chance slip."
Thus muttering to himself, he unbuckled the money belt that was around the waist of the sleeping man, and fastened it securely around his own. He then abstracted Walter's passport and the other papers that were in his pockets without arousing him.
"He lies there like a dead dog," thought the drover, "and with the dose I gave him is not likely to trouble anyone until morning."
Waiting impatiently for more than an hour, until everyone was in bed and the house silent, Seppi quitted the room on tiptoe, locked the door on the outside, and crept noiselessly along the passage and down the stairs. Andre had not forgotten to leave the outer door unlocked, and pushing back the bolt with the greatest caution, the ruffian slipped out, and as soon as he had got clear of the village, hurried away at the top of his speed. The Swiss drover had shown great cunning in his scheme to get possession of the money from Walter, and he carried it out with equal boldness. He had often helped to drive cattle to Paris before, and knew the roads well. He had frequently been at the inn at Boissy, and its distance from Paris and the character of the man who attended to the business recommended it as well suited to his purpose. Andre, like many others of his kind, was greedy of money, and the golden bribe quieted all his doubts as to the truth of the story about his companion. Seppi, on his side, knowing that the sleeping powder which he had secretly mixed with Walter's wine was sufficient to prevent him waking for nearly a whole day, gave himself no further trouble as to what might happen in the way of pursuit. It was enough for him that his stratagem had been successful, and he hastened along the well-known bypaths until he had left Boissy far behind. To be continued. End of Section 3.